Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast. Go ahead. Let's okay. I got this. Go ahead.
Hey, Aaron. Great to be here today.
Go ahead. Finish it. I'll pick this up.
Oh boy.
Okay. So thanks everyone for listening and watching. As Trishul has already kind of let us know, this conversation may or may not go off the rails in a way that, like, all our conversations kind of go off the rails, but this one's already off to a great start. Last time, as we were finishing up a conversation, Trishul had said something along the lines of his default process when it came to decision making was to make his life simpler. And after a conversation, because that was about stock options, deal company stock, like we started kind of chatting about that, and he wrote down a note to get ready for today's conversation. And he wrote down one word and said stuff. And when it came back today, like he couldn't remember what that meant. So we had to kind of rehash our post conversation of what we were going to talk about today. And we finally figured out kind of what he meant by stuff as it relates to making his life simpler, I think. But I had a different take of the intersection between stuff and making life simpler. So first, Trisha, I'll let you start off. When you wrote down stuff, what were you thinking? And I have some, I don't have counters. I'll have follow-up thoughts.
Yeah. So excuse me for the crazy start here. I think I got a bit blurred when we clicked play.
Oh, that's like behind the scenes. Like there was, if you'll notice, there was a long pause between the end of the music and when I started my intro, as like we're both waiting for the other person to like click to show the video. So that's why Trishul fell apart.
Yeah, and I'm not used, or I'm getting more used to the computers just doing things by thinking about it rather than having to actually click buttons. But here we are. Okay, so a little bit of recap from the last episode. I think the thought experiment, Aaron, that you put forward to me is, what if I somehow found a couple $100,000 sitting in my bank account that wasn't there the day before? You know, what would I do with it? Something like that.
Oh, so this is actually, it's even better. I asked if you had an extra $300,000 of Apple stock that you inherited, that you like, it's not part of your lifestyle now. What would you do with it? You said you'd sell it and diversify. So I then said, okay, if you had that extra $300,000 just sitting in your bank account, what would you do with it? And you'd like sell and diversify. Okay, like, what was there any way that $300,000 could change your lifestyle at all? That was my challenge to you.
Yeah, right. You know, it's interesting. I heard a quote over the past week that maybe relates to something like this. The notion is a reasonable concept of wealth is the difference between the amount of stuff that you have minus the amount of stuff that you want, right? So one understanding of that could be, you have billions of dollars worth of stuff, but you want tens of billions of dollars. Therefore, you're poor in your mind, right?
Okay.
And another concept could be, you could be dirt poor and have nothing, but maybe $10 to your name. But if you don't want anything beyond that, then you have more than the first guy, right?
Okay.
So it's this understanding of it's not what you have necessarily. It's what you kind of want that might
Okay.
be a driving determination of maybe even this episode. So, frankly, I don't really want too much more than I already have. So that there is little room for thinking about what else I might want, to add in my life if I had some extra amount of money, sitting around.
So, oh man, because like I'm like, if I had to challenge you to splurge on something, you have to spend $10,000. Like you inherited 300. I'm making you spend 10,000. You got to come up with something.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting. Like whenever we update our home insurance policy, right? They have the clause for personal items, like how much coverage
yeah.
you want, and it starts off with like a couple $100,000, and literally all the things I have probably cost less than that $10,000.
So I could definitely see, like from like a financial advisor business perspective, this is really helpful with like the self-selection of clients. Like the people who want to work with you, like really want to work with you, and people who don't want to work with you really don't want to work with you. So you've got a good client base of the people who really want to work with you.
Yeah. Well, I'd say my tagline is individuals who are looking to reach financial independence sooner rather than later, right? So that there's a self-selection going on there. And it also ties into that notion from our last conversation of if you have extra money, what are you going to do with it? Well, the tagline answers that question, right? You're going to put it towards this notion of financial freedom sooner rather than later. And, frankly, that's been my driving force for maybe my whole life, right? Because if you kind of think back to it, if a high level goal is to be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it, right? To have the ability to make the choices in life that you want to make with less encumbrancy or less external control, right? A big part of that is financial independence. So in my mind, I always thought, what's the quickest way to get there? And that's kind of been the driving force of all my decisions. And frankly, I guess I've been thinking that way so long, it's a little hard to change direction now that I'm about over 40 years in.
So the reason I was looking forward to this conversation was most of the time for a lot of that idea of financial independence earlier rather than later, save more, spend less, like all of those are good, prudent financial principles. And it sounds for you, I guess so a lot of times like that save more, spend less idea requires some kind of discipline or mental energy to consciously choose not to spend more. And that was one of my concerns is I tend to be very cognizant of the mental energy and the discipline it takes and just the willpower idea, because I don't restrict myself the same way that you do. And I was wondering, like, does it require that extra work? Because go back to like, if you're trying to make your life simpler, I get the idea that having less stuff helps make your life simpler. But I was wondering, does it require more mental energy than my strategy of not tracking anything and not caring?
It's interesting. And I mentioned this way back. We talked about a similar theme in a completely different context, like maybe 100 episodes ago. But the one thing I kind of put forward is if you kind of look at most successful people, they probably take some idea to an extreme beyond what normal people try to do. And it's more of a compulsion or an innate drive than a matter of personal choice. So, for me, it's more on this notion of trying to be efficient about things, trying to optimize things, and my brain just does it. It just tries to figure out the best path forward, given constraints, and it's so ingrained at this point. It's not really a matter of having to put mental energy towards it. It just does it.
Okay. So you kind of get, because you've taken to extreme, which we've talked about, like that does play out. Like the extremes are almost easier to maintain. Like I always do something or I never do something is easier than the moderation. Like doing moderation for anything just requires that extra energy.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where, for example, with the I mentioned I do something similar with my workout routine, right? I just try to stick to it, just try to show up day in, day out, don't try to question it. But I would say when it comes to the mental stuff, for me, it's just been far easier than the workout stuff. It's tough for me to do that workout. It's the hardest part of my day. But when it comes to optimizing my finances or optimizing my budget or spending, it's something that I'm just so used to. It just kind of happens on its own without me trying. It's probably more forceful to stop it, which I'm learning now, than it is to perpetuate it.
So for me, I'm definitely not taking it to your extreme. I'm not even close. I buy stuff, and I'll have some like follow-up thoughts on that. But I acknowledge kind of all the prudent financial principles, and knowing myself, trying to not spend the energy tracking how much I'm spending. I try to put enough like guardrails and safety nets in place that it's never really been a problem throughout my life. The main things I mean by that are just saving first. So my wife and I use 401k as much as possible, transferring money to taxable investment accounts, automating a lot of that, and having a decent cash reserve. And so if we happen to go over in a particular month, we have the cash to pay off that credit card bill. And then next month, like, okay, I transferred this much from savings to checking. I have this intuitive thing, like I want to try and transfer that much back. That kind of idea. But when it comes to buying my wife a birthday present or Christmas present, and same thing for when she's looking at that, we have an intuitive sense of this is too expensive or this is not. But we've never like officially discussed that, and we've never I'll take that back. We've never established any numeric limit. That's just never been something. But we have had a lot of conversations throughout our walks, just as husband and wife. So like, what things are practical, what things fit our lifestyle, what things don't. And when you said stuff, the first thing that came to mind was I bought a snowboard last year, and I went in like I knew exactly I wanted to get the new Burton step-on bindings, and like I getting older, I want to be able to do this for a long time. This is what I want, and I know I can afford it. So I didn't pause, I didn't stop, consider, I didn't like budget for it, I didn't kind of plan in advance for it. Like I kind of knew this one. And as I was thinking about this conversation, it wasn't an impulse buy. I think that might be the key distinction for me. I had started snowboarding in college. Then when my oldest daughter turned 5, she started skiing. I started skiing then. She's 12 now. So for 7 years, I've been pretty much skiing only. And the skis I got were hand-me-downs from someone, so I didn't spend money on the skis. The poles were cheap. I got off Amazon, and the boots I got were when Sports Authority was going out of business. I kept looking for ski boots, and I found this pair. Went to check every few weeks. Eventually, they were cheap enough. Like, okay, I can buy these. But I used the same skis, boots, and poles the entire time. And now that all 3 kids are old enough that they can have picked themselves back up on the snow, like I think I want to get back into snowboarding. I don't know for sure. I want to try it. So this would have been like 2 winters ago. I go out, take my snowboard, and bindings break immediately. And it's a combination of them being 20 years old and haven't used them in 7 years. So I'm like, okay, that kind of sucks, but I have the skis. I brought them up with me. I just switched the skis and went back to that. And so this last winter, it's like, you know what? I kind of want to get into snowboarding again. So I rented a snowboard for the season to kind of judge, like, do I still really miss this, or like, is it worth spending the money? And I had a great time. I was fun. Like, okay, so I knew a year ago, year plus, that I wanted to buy I needed new bindings and new snowboard boots because my boots, the sole is literally falling off. So I went in like March, April, May, something like that. I'd done research on getting older, like, the Burton step-on bindings. Like, there's a couple of versions, like different step-ons. So I did like brand reviews, and like, these are the best. These are a combination of like lightweight on your feet, comfortable, and they're really popular. So they were sold out. So couldn't buy them last spring. So I kind of set a reminder for myself that they'll probably be coming in around October, November. I go into Sports Basement in October. It's like, I'm ready to buy these boots. I know I need boots and bindings. And I'm also like mentally thinking, you know what? My snowboard was a used hand-me-down when I was 20, 19, something like that. So the board itself is like at least 20 years old, probably close to 25 or 30 years old. Does not surprise me if I need a new board. So like, and literally like the bindings, they don't fit on the board I have. They would have to get like some other like a weird adjustment they don't have in the store because the board's so old. It's like, okay, I get a new board. So I spent $1,000 on new boots, new board, new bindings. And so like, but it wasn't an impulse buy. And the other thing I was reflecting on was the part of the reason why I have no problem with this is I did so much research going in, and I know, again, knowing myself, I'm going to actually use these so much for at least a decade. When I bought a car, we had 2 kids. So my oldest is, my middle one's 10. We had 2 kids, and my old 2-door car, like, okay, this is getting kind of hard. We have 2 kids. I need a bigger car. So we were thinking probably getting a 3. I would like to go up to the snow. I need an SUV. Did a lot of research, settled on the Honda Pilot, looked around, ended up buying a new Honda Pilot in 2013. I still have that same car, and I'm definitely keeping it at least another 2 years, maybe probably 3 years, when my 12-year-old becomes 15 and she needs to start driving. So I'm going to get at least 13 years out of this new car. And that has been one of my personal themes, that I do a lot of research before I kind of buy anything for myself. Like, I don't do any like impulse buys.
Yeah.
I do a lot of research. I know almost exactly what I want, and then I never replace it. So it's on a like month, like, you spend $1,000 on snowboard equipment. Well, yes, but I spent $1,000 over like 4 years. Like, and like go back to like ski, like I have probably spent less than $2,000 on snowboard and ski equipment, including snows, over the last 20 years. And that was kind of my thought process when it came to stuff. It's not that I never buy anything.
Yeah.
It's that I kind of do it so rarely, but I'm going to buy the thing that's exactly what I want, that fits my feet, fits my style, fits my comfort level, and I never replace it. I use it a ton.
Yeah.
And so I think I didn't know how to kind of reconcile that with both either your philosophy or the prudent financial planning ideas.
Yeah.
Because like one of my baselines is like, I don't want to have to budget. That's just like, that pains me. And I track clients. So I'm like, I have cash reserves, I have savings. Like I'm not worried about my finances at all. But
Yeah.
trying to track things sounds so annoying. It's not worth it. It makes my life worse, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, a bunch to unpack there. I think I can probably lay out my own snowboard purchasing history as a corollary, because there's some alignment, but there's some deviation as well. So I think that might be a good place to start. So similarly, I don't buy impulse items, so that's probably where we overlap, right? It's not part of my genes, right? At the same time, I'd probably take it to one more order of extreme that you have with the purchasing of items. And maybe the snowboard is a good example. So yeah, I had my equipment since high school. In fact, that's in the 90s, so we're talking well over 20 years. And then what ended up happening about 2 or 3 years ago in Pennsylvania is, maybe this even came up in a previous episode. We were just boarding casually, and literally the whole boot lifted off the sole of my 20-year-old boots. And I kind of realized, okay, got to do something about this. I still glued the boot back in with like this super heavy glue. And
I have shoe glue in my garage since I tried to do the
I
same thing.
use the shoe glue to get through the weekend, so I wanted to still do my research and figure something out. But actually, what ended up happening is, on the drive back on our last day, I just got on Craigslist, had an hour to kill in the car, and we literally found this old ski instructor who had lots of equipment that he was selling off, and I got a pair of Burton boots, right? They were a season or two old. And then I got bindings. I think I bought those like new, but I was out like maybe 150, $200, and I'm probably good to go for the next 10 or so years.
That's interesting, because I was having a conversation with some friends about my golf clubs, and how I have never actually purchased irons. My parents bought me some when I was in high school.
Right.
And again, that's reasonable. Like I'm still a kid. I don't have any income. I used those until I got another set of hand-me-down irons from, I think, one of my old bosses. And so and they still work. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
And again, the skis were also the hand-me-down idea. And so I feel like there's it's like there's something there of, I try to look for free or cheap whenever possible, but in this case, like the Burton Step-ons, like there's no used ones out there. Like they're really popular. They're also kind of like brand new-ish, the technology. And so I've gotten a lot of hand-me-down ski clothes for my kids that, like, I'll take it all. I'll figure out, like, so about November, I have like take the 3 kids, like pull everything out. Like, does this still fit you? No, does this doesn't fit you?
Yeah.
And then for the oldest, I'm okay buying new stuff for her, knowing that I have 2 other kids that are going to grow into it as she grows out of it. So it's like, I'm either like going as cheap as possible or exactly what I want that fits what the need is at this point in my life. I guess but I want to be careful using need, because like it's definitely a want in this case. It's a recreation lifestyle kind of idea.
So I think the underlying thought process behind my purchases or my decisions very early on, when I first started having income and a paycheck, it basically went like this: if I can save as much as possible, I can accelerate the path towards becoming financially independent. And then every decision from that point onward is, do I want this thing or do I want to be financially independent sooner? Right. And in my mind, that helped me make that decision a lot more easily. So with that framework, I kind of put it forward with all my purchases. Like, here's probably another example where we're slightly different. I've decided to go down like the Android universe of devices, and I think you're an Apple, right?
Yes, I have. It took me several years. Like this past year, I did buy a new Mac for my business that finally, like, it's the first Mac I've ever purchased. But I already had the iPhone, I already had an iPad, so like I've completed the drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right. So, there's this thought process that you might go through of a standard Apple user versus a standard Android user versus a standard low budget Android user, which is probably me, right?
Okay.
So you have your standard Apple user, and the comparison to that is like a flagship Android, Samsung, right? Something like that, where you have a solid device. But then in the Android world, you can also get a budget device for a lot less. So the differential between, like, roughly, do you know how much your last phone cost, ballpark?
I'll guess $800 3 years ago.
Okay, so
I don't know. I think I got an Apple or iPhone 13 roughly when it came out, but so I don't. Yeah, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that.
Okay, so around 800, something like that, right?
Yeah, that'll be my guess.
So I know this number off the top of my head because I actually had to get a new phone like last month, where I ended up crushing my other phone on the highway. So I just got another model of the similar one, latest one, and it's right here, right? It's nothing too fancy, but it's $100. So you can imagine that type of distinction in products over a lifetime, right? And it may not make a big difference over the decades, but if you do that with all the purchases, maybe it does, perhaps.
And that's fair. And so this actually reminds me, there's a Kitsis article that kind of talks about like prudent spending relative to income, and kind of, and like part of it is like to not like spend shame either way. Like I am confident I'm saving enough, and a big part of that is there's definitely a shift from, I don't know, 6 years ago ish, 7 years ago, like when I started, it's a combination of like my wife was making more money and we were starting like and we had three, it would have been my third son is born. He's now 7, so like we knew we weren't having more kids, so we kind of like can establish this is our family size. We moved into our current house 7 years ago. She was doing well at work, and I kind of like, I want to move from a kind of assistant staff role to a financial advisor role. And part of that was kind of going with like the happiness and well-being research. I've seen it with a lot of clients as well. Like I didn't want to stop working at 60 or in my late 50s. Like I wanted to have that sense of purpose. And so I kind of done the math. Like I know I don't need to save as much for financial independence if I build my business the right way, in a way that I can continue to live the lifestyle I want both now and in my 60s. Because if I do this right, I could work into my 70s, and doesn't take me as much of a time commitment, whether it's hours per week or weeks per year, which means that I don't necessarily need to be as aggressive saving for retirement specifically. And we saved up into a little more taxable investment accounts, and that's given us other flexibility now, especially as my wife was laid off. We had other projects we want to get to. So like there's other things we kind of choosing to use our money for. So but that is a difference of like, I'm not trying to save as much as possible to be financially independent. I am trying to establish the lifestyle I want both now and in my 60s, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it's also interesting. My spending has evolved because being single, I could be really lean and mean and just myself, and it doesn't really matter, right? And of course, things change once you get married, and then things especially change once you have a kid and whatnot. But I think a good difference is, and we've talked about this before, spending on things versus spending on experience. So, when it's come to experiences, then the budget has been close to unlimited, meaning whatever we want to do, if we think it's something worthwhile, we would do it from an experience perspective. And again, the lens I kind of looked at it that goes through my mind even today is, it's not that I couldn't spend more on the phone, but I feel like, for example, just bringing the phone example back, it feels like it's not going to make a dent in how happy I am if I have 8 gigs of RAM versus 4. The phone does whatever I need it to do. And in addition to that, when my last phone broke, which I had spent like another $100 or $120 on, it literally didn't matter. I'm like, okay, I'll just get a new one, and it was there the next day. Like, I don't feel bad about losing these items because they really don't mean much at all in the grand scheme of things.
There's two things I think that reminded me of something. When you mentioned the memory of the phone, one, there was a period where like my Gmail was getting full.
Yeah.
And I had kind of figured, I just like had to figure out, why is my Gmail storage a lot been full. And mostly like anytime that pictures were being emailed to me or on a thread, that kind of like replied all, so they stayed in that. So like 3 times a year, I'd have to go back and delete all the emails that had pictures either attached to them or like embedded in the email.
Yeah.
And that annoyed me so much. It was like so much of like busy work and annoying, and it was the same feeling I have like when I'm like tracking spending kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so when they came out with a plan of like, you pay for this much storage, and like, okay, done. I do it for the whole family, my wife and I. It was the same thing with the phones of saving photos on the phone. I'd have to like manually sync them to the computer several times a year to save those photos.
Yeah.
And it just took hours out of my life, so that when the iCloud backup came into existence, I had no problem signing up for that.
Right.
And now I don't have to worry about the size of the storage space of the phone at all.
Yeah.
So like that's that kind of idea, especially since my wife and I have been married, of like, we don't like the idea of throwing money away. I say we're conscious that we don't like to buy cheap stuff. We don't like to buy stuff that's going to break and go in the trash right away. But we are very conscious of our time.
Yeah.
And so I remember sometime last year, the bathroom or the toilet in the kids' bathroom was leaking. It was making a running sound. I open it up. I look in, like, oh, that the ring gasket on the stopper needs to be replaced. I know how to do it. It'll take me, I don't know, several hours of work. And she points out, like, okay, when are you gonna get to it? And I look at my calendar. It's like 2 weekends from now.
Yeah.
So she calls a plumber. Plumber's there the next day. They fix it. It's like $200 for the like parts and labor, of which it's like $10 for the parts and $190 for the labor kind of thing. And it's fixed the next day. And that kind of idea of being conscious of what can you do yourself and what can we use our resources to make our life easier.
Yeah.
because I agree. I agreed with your, or I don't say agree. I appreciated that your philosophy of like your default is to make your life simpler.
Yeah.
And for us, I think our default is to make our life easier or better. And we are conscious of like we've tried to stop buying kids Christmas presents if we can avoid it. We've now are spending money on an event that we're going to go to. So 2 years ago, their Christmas present was Taylor Swift tickets. We went to go see the Taylor Swift concert in LA. This past year, we got them. We're all going to go see a Cirque du Soleil show in San Francisco, and so we are cognizant of trying to avoid just buying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that word stuck with us because my wife and I say that all the time. Like we don't need more stuff.
Yeah. Right.
But she also understood like I'm gonna get a new snowboard. Like, okay. Like I've been playing pickleball a lot. I've been loving it. I've made my morning workout. I've been able to do almost every weekday. And I was playing, I wore through the soles of my shoes. I had some Nikes on, wore through the soles. So she looked at just did some research, kind of pickleball shoes, like the best court shoes for that. And she ordered them for me. They fit. I've been using them. They're nice. And then they also hold up when I play pickleball. And I have no idea how much they cost. And my wife knew at the time, but if I asked her now, she might not remember. But that's kind of that idea. We have no problem spending the money for the specific thing that makes our life easier or better.
Mm-hmm.
But we tend not to spend money superfluously.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. And but that's it's a hard maxim to live by, kind of thing. And that's weird. It's built up through more than casual, marriage foundational conversations over years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that neither of us is worried about the other spending too much.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of notes of alignment there. Like, for example, clearly I'm not typical, but also it's your spending and your household spending with your wife is also not typical. For the typical American family, often
I agree.
Spending is the first priority, and savings is the afterthought, right? So
I would also say that we're aware our income is greater than most average or median Americans, so that makes a difference.
It does, but even so, I mentioned this in the past when I was leaving the hedge fund and we were looking at the 401k plan. More than half of the 401k assets were my own singular amount that for the entire firm, right? And we're not talking about lowly compensated individuals. Right? So that there's this understanding that it's very typical to see your gross income and spend that amount, not realizing there's taxes, and savings.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So
I've always again, but I that's probably because of my profession. It's I know the impact of savings. So my wife has been maxing out her 401k her entire since she was 21.
Right.
I've been doing the same thing. I know the benefit of compound growth. I've been saving in taxable investment accounts for a long time. So yeah, so it's the discipline we had in our 20s almost.
Yeah.
To build up enough that one allows me to start my own business, and two allows us to have that comfort level, because we definitely didn't spend anything like what we do now in our 20s, but also our incomes were 25% of what they are now.
Yeah, you can imagine that there's the median household spending notion, and you're a standard div or two this way, and I'm maybe a standard div or two beyond that. But even so, the other thing I might put forward is I think we've also seen something secular going on with just this whole stuff space in general. We've talked about this notion in other spaces where like the marginal cost of like information is zero now, the marginal cost of like knowledge is dropping to zero, and frankly it seems like the marginal cost of actual stuff is racing to the bottom to be almost nothing. Like if you want something that does the job, it can be almost nothing, and then if you want something that can go like add that much more happiness beyond that, it's probably going to be dropping off. The reason I say this is because there's been a lot of deflationary pressure on a lot of the things that we use in life, right? Consumer goods, almost nothing. You can, like, for example, a flat screen TV, 40-inch, you could get one for like $200 now. If you don't want the super best resolution, but it'll be better than any TV 10 years ago, which you were super ecstatic about. And
so I'm not sure I quite agree. I don't have I'm thinking, so one of my thoughts was like the right tool for the job. Several years ago, I did a backpacking trip with my dad and my brother, and I bought these Keen hiking boots that are waterproof, and they become my rain boots, basically. Like they're really great quality boots. I still use them regularly whenever it's raining, when I walk the dog. I also have a separate pair of snow boots that fit a little bit differently. The tread's different. The rubber reinforcement is a little different. And I think that those two could have been combined at like a lower income level. They're not exactly the same, but like I think those could be combined, but the two do a better job, like having two different roles in my life. And also, like, again, got really nice ones years ago and have still hold on to them. And I'm probably going to hold on to these same exact pairs of boots for at least another 3 to 5 years.
So
it's but again, like, these items I don't think are getting cheaper, but I think it almost reminds me of that like the movies versus theater conversation, where I definitely think there are some things going way down in terms of cost, especially cost relative to value, but there are some things that the technology is getting better. And like, I don't see, again, it's just because we're recording this in January and I'm going skiing this weekend. Like, all the thoughts are when it's like kids' ski clothes aren't getting cheaper. Well, that's not true. Like the snow pants I got for my middle, those were cheaper than I expected. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe like I think high-end stuff is better technology, but the low-end stuff probably is cheaper. I don't know how to explain that.
Here's how I see it. Excuse me, my throat is really dry. I'm gonna take another sip. 1 second.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, so what I'm positing is, I think you can cover pretty much most of your stuff requirements with maybe less than like $5,000 or $10,000 over. And if you compare that to like your lifetime income, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Like, you can get a TV, your consumer electronics, the stuff that you mentioned, like, yeah, you can overspend for those, and you add all that stuff up and you get maybe add in your $1,000 snowboard set, you get like $1,000 or $2,000 worth of recreational equipment, which frankly is more of a luxury type of sport than, your standard basketball and tennis. And
I agree. It's like, right? I've joked around with both wife and friends, like, yeah, between skiing and golf, like, I apparently I picked the rich white person sports.
Yeah.
So
And look, you throw in $100 phone and you get a music collection that's as large as the entire collection of every musical thing that has ever been created for almost
okay,
nothing
yeah.
streaming, right? So all of these things combined, does it really add up to that much, even if you splurge on a few things here and there?
So as I think about that, you mentioned the music thing, and
Yeah.
like I like listening to music. I listen to radio. It's like I know people who will spend as much as I've spent on like snowboard and ski equipment,
Yeah.
they'll spend on music equipment. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't get that. I was like, that does not interest me whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, my wife and I don't like to cook,
Yeah.
so our kitchen is pretty simple,
Yeah.
and like we don't have fancy oven stove and as we think about like we we just are very clear what our interests are,
Yeah.
and we are we have no problem spending the money for those things that can that we enjoy and make our life either easier or better.
Yep.
But the other stuff, we have no problem going as cheap as possible or not at all. Like
Yeah.
we're not trying to. I think that's one thing. Like that's probably that's like I don't think in anything in our lives we have a keeping up with the Joneses feeling.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm pretty comfortable with that. For nothing in our lives do we feel like we are spending due to outside pressure.
Hmm.
It's entirely internally motivated of we don't care about that at all, so we don't spend anything,
Yeah.
and we do care about this, so we have no problem spending our disposable income on the
Yeah.
stuff that we enjoy.
Yep. Yeah. I guess my point is, unless you're an aficionado in a certain area or like an audiophile, in that example, you can get very good $100 speakers or headsets or whatever that will blow away anything from 100 years ago, right? Better than any richest king on the planet from 200
Yeah,
years ago, right?
yeah,
And it's costing almost nothing, frankly. Like all of these things together compared to all of the wealth that we each bring in. You take in your average medium household income, $60,000 a year, and you take 6,000 of that, right? That's half the stuff that you may need for a good decade or two at a base level. And you should be able to satisfy your needs for entertainment, right?
yeah.
For playing video games, whatever it happens to be, sports, recreation. And it's really almost nothing if you add it all up together, to the point where does it really make a difference even if you spend twice as much? Maybe not, right? Or if you do have a certain area where you want to spend 10 times as much, that might not even make a big difference. But as you were kind of alluding to, there are other things where, yeah, you can really dig in and spend tons of money if you're following another metric beyond just like what you need to satisfy your ability to function in everyday life and have some sense of enjoyment from the things that you have.
I think so. Again, I've been spending this entire time trying to think of like other stuff that I have that's like superfluous. And I did like a couple years ago, my wife bought me a one wheel, and that is one
Okay.
thing that's just like it's pure toy.
Yeah.
It's was kind of expensive. It's fun. Had like I still use it, but I broke my elbow falling off of it. So like that is one thing that was uh um does not fit in with all of our other kind of spending maxims.
So you add all this up, Aaron. I don't think you're getting $1,000 a year over the last
Uh
2 decades.
uh no, I was trying to think for a thousand a year. I, I think it's still probably on scale.
Yeah.
Because I go so long between, like, again, like I'm thinking like things I buy for myself. If that
Yeah.
like and like fair I mentioned beforehand, like my wife buys most of my clothes. And I so I know like that clothing budget, so I'm not including that.
Yeah.
I I would not be including like going out to eat, other travel related items.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all
Uh,
entertainment,
so
food,
so
nutrition,
okay, so if I
experience.
included things, so I guess if I included going out to eat, I'd say
Oh, but
I definitely
I
spend
would, I
more
would say
on that.
let's not include that though. This is stuff, right? This is
Okay,
tangible material.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's like I spend more on lift tickets
Yeah.
than I do
Yeah.
on equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I spend more on going out to eat. Yeah, like the actual stuff in my house. It's my wife buys me clothes.
Yeah.
That there's she probably spends more on clothes for me than I do on stuff for myself.
Yeah.
That I'd say is probably fair.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, like the headset that I got 4 years ago, and some of the foam's kind of coming off, and I have a docking station that's even older that I was having some problems. I started looking at prices of docking stations or headsets, and like,
Yeah.
I'll make this one work. So I did enough troubleshooting and figured out like, oh, like there's this one setting that I wasn't doing correctly, so I fixed it. It's like, okay, so I'm gonna hold on to these headset for hopefully another few years.
So we're really talking about like $1,000 a year, right? Generously.
I'm sure it's more than that, but I can't think of what this. No, we. In terms of like actual like clothing, non-food. I guess if you're including the iPhone, now
Yeah.
that's probably still because I get enough years out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the car, but again,
Yeah.
the car, like the amortized cost of the car, I think is, I'll say 38,000 over 15 years is my goal.
Yeah.
So that would probably be more. So, oh man, okay. Right now, okay, so I want to like, I still want you to answer my first question. If you
Yeah.
had to spend $10,000, so every now and then I pose this kind of thing to clients just to get them to be creative. Someone would donate to charity, and I have no problem with that. Like, it helps me learn about them. Someone spending on some kind of experience or trip.
Yeah.
And like right now, if you said, if I like forced the question on myself, if I had to spend $10,000 on something,
Right.
and now I'm thinking like, I don't know what I'd spend it on.
And you
And,
mentioned
and here's
something before that was interesting. And I'm just going to say it, right? It wasn't this verbatim, but it was this notion of, oh, we have too much stuff, right? We don't need more stuff, right?
kind of. I don't. Yeah, like it's part of it is
Like,
as we have 3 kids and the kids get older, like I'm definitely spending more on their sports equipment.
yeah.
That just because they like literally get bigger and they grow out of their cleats, that they need new cleats.
Yeah.
If I had to, so it would. I don't even think like when it comes to like a trip or experience,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything I'm not doing that I want to do.
Yeah.
And or kids, family, and their school, like time constraints are the hard part.
Well, I think what we're trying to say is not experience stuff, literal material things, $10,000 on you. Like, what are you gonna buy, Aaron?
Oh man. because like just the way that the internet is, being on anything on social media, you're getting inundated with ads, and some of these ads, like, oh, that looks interesting. Like there's like something to help you ski better. There's like a rack to hold skis on the car. I get ads for pickleball stuff. I get because I'm sure if like phones are listening, if I get, and I bought snowboard stuff, like I still can't think of anything I'd buy. Like even 'cause I got on board a stomp pad that you like use, put your foot in when you're not strapped in. I saw one in the store as I'm gonna, was like, oh, do I need one of those? And like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I still have one in like the bottom of my it's like snow equipment bin that I didn't attach to my last board. I'll just go dig that one out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what I would spend. Like maybe new goggles. That's like $50 to $100.
Right. Just getting back to my point, it's like you can have anything you want now, right? Basically. And here's an interesting thing. Like I remember one time we had some extra money, and I just had this thought experiment of, can you literally get anything you want now as a product, right? The old notion was, if you can think of an app, right, it exists, no matter what type of app, right? I think the same is true for literal stuff. Like if you can think of some sort of product, you can buy it on like Alibaba or Temu or Amazon or whatever. It'll be there for sale. And now we're at a point where if there's anything you want, you could literally go out and get it, and it'll arrive at your doorstep, like whatever it is.
Oh man, I thought I was gonna force you to answer that question and come up with something. Like if I when I think I'm spending money, like I would buy like nicer tickets to a Padres or Chargers game, something like that. Like I'd buy like a luxury box kind of thing.
That's an experience.
I know, yeah.
Like it's an easy answer if you let experience. Of course, we can all experience new things and try new, right? But the point of the conversation is,
you know what? No, I if I had to spend $10,000 on stuff, I would buy new. Even like I'd buy new irons, because because there's been enough advancements in technology that long irons can be replaced by hybrids. I don't know if you know golf equipment at all.
Titanium? No.
It's a hybrid is the club head design is like part fairway wood, part iron.
Okay.
And so they are just more forgiving. They're make your shots a little bit better. And so I have not used a hybrid ever in my life, because when I bought irons, the technology didn't exist at that time.
Yeah.
And so that's been an advancement in golf technology that I don't use it often enough. So like getting a new driver, new wedges, like those are a little more important in terms of actual golf game.
Yeah.
Just going to use those shots more. So I would buy new irons that had hybrids in them.
Okay.
But even then, that's like maybe 1,000. Probably, I'd probably spend less on that.
Yeah. So the follow-up question to that is, okay, now how much better is your life, or how much happier?
Oh yeah, it's like I'm not buying that now. I think it's like it makes a difference in like 4 shots a year for me. Not 4 rounds, 4 individual shots.
Right. So now we're optimizing on 4 decimal places to the right of the happiness.
Because I can make the shot. Like, so as I say, of the times I hit my 3 iron when I should have used a 4 hybrid, I make the shot, let's say, half the time. So the 4 hybrid isn't going to make the shot for me on the other half. It's like half of my misses become less bad.
Yeah. I think the overarching point is, well, okay, so then I think it's notable that we're living in an age where you can have all the stuff you want, and it's probably going to cost a fraction of your wealth or income to get there. And then beyond that, it could have marginal improvement, but it may not be life-changing by any measure. Even if you spend 10, 100, or 1,000 times, more on those material items.
Yeah, it's like I would be if I had to spend $10,000 on myself on stuff, I would be upgrading some of the stuff I already have.
Yeah,
I could see, sure, I could spend the money on new skis. But if you said this a year ago, like the snowboard, the step-on bindings, like that again, but that's like a new technology that I think will make my life better, just from like the having to step in instead of strap on, like upgrading stuff. But like my wife and I, we each have Kindles that we love, and we spend a lot of time reading, and books don't cost nearly as much. So I guess like ebooks.
It's just another example. You can get infinite amount of books for almost nothing. You get that. What's the subscription for the book thing? Kindle
Unlimited.
Right.
Yeah.
Millions of books for free, or get your library app and you get another 10 million books for free.
Yeah.
Right.
We download books from the library all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, what if I had to spend $10,000? Like, I don't care about jewelry. I don't care about like the designer clothes. I'm very happy with my ski jacket and snowboard and ski pants. I like my car.
It's like like a couple hundred years ago, 100% of our effort as a species was figuring out food, right? And then a generation ago, 99% of humans don't need to think about that anymore, because 1% can do figure out the food for the rest of the 99. And maybe there was a period where, okay, now the food is covered, but the rest is stuff, right? Stuff you can spend the rest of your time accumulating and amassing and whatnot. And I think now we're getting to the point where that stuff is 1% of what it used to cost, to accumulate and be okay with. And I think it's a different age.
Yeah. Like I have a Nintendo Switch. I like playing Zelda. I spent hours on that. Like
think about the marginal happiness per hour on a Zelda game, like $40 and 10 or 100 hours.
I have definitely thought about the money spent on Zelda relative to hours of entertainment might be the highest ROI of anything else in my life.
Yeah.
I think it maybe the pickleball shoes and pickleball paddle like could match that, because the cost is going to be similar, and I get maybe as many hours playing pickleball as I do playing Zelda.
Like, even think of the iPhone again. You use that thing every day.
Oh yeah. Like I've never been concerned about the value I get from my iPhone.
Yeah. So like I was just looking at my technology literal physical stack in my bedroom. You have the Switch, the VR headset, the projector, the laptop, the phone, and the TV. 5 items. You add it all up.
I don't have the VR headset, but I don't think I'm ever going to get that. Like, it's just that doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, right. But you add it all up, and you have literally an entertainment source that could satisfy, $10,000-$20,000 worth of entertainment. It's all in combined less than $1,200, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, I will let you off the hook. You do not need to spend $10,000 on yourself. Go ahead and sell the stock and put it in a diversified portfolio.
I didn't get to talk about the rabbit thing. I didn't even know how to squeeze that in, but
now let's save that.
yeah, that now our dozen or so listeners could be in suspense for.
It's called a cliffhanger.
Yeah. I like that. Good stuff.
Okay. So this is good. The good conversation. I think your note stuff was a good note. One word, stuff. That was good.
I was being parsimonious with the use of the paper. So, good conversation, Aaron. I enjoyed it as well. If you're enjoying these conversations, do spread the word and like, listen, and subscribe. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical as no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.